Euromaxx highlights. And here's your host, Megan Lee.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another highlight show coming to you from our studios at Berlin's Brandenburg Gate. We've got the best picks of the week for you. This time around, here's a look at what's coming up. Summer sensation, culture vultures head for the Edinburgh International Festival. Role model, Piet Mondrian's works influence artists to this day. And vacation tips explore the fascinating Swiss canton of Fribourg. We start off today's show in Scotland, where the month of August is dedicated to culture on all levels. The Edinburgh Festival, which includes the well-known Fringe, is the largest arts fest in the world. There you'll find something for everyone, from comedy and cabaret to classical music and children's shows. Here's a closer look at this month's program.
Usher Hall, one of Edinburgh's principal concert venues, appears in a new light. An audience of some 20,000 watched the Harmonium Project, a multimedia spectacle that opens the Edinburgh International Festival, one of the Scottish capital's annual highlights. Visitors and locals alike are impressed.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like, I live here and I've never seen anything like it before, so it was something different.
We're from Edinburgh, and it's probably one of the best things we've seen at Edinburgh Festival for many years.
Really proud that it was put on in the city that I live in, and I just think that it's fantastic for Scotland. It's incredible for people visiting the nation, and this is what we do best, festivals.
At the same time, the Fringe Festival is on, featuring over 3,000 performances by up-and-coming artists. Close to 500,000 people from all over the world come here to see and hear stars from opera, music, and theater. An appearance here will also boost or clinch many a career, even for Alex Aitchison, the festival's official photographer.
I've been applying for this for 3 years. The first year I didn't get anywhere because I just kind of started photography then, so it was expected. Last year I got down to the final part of the interview as well and just missed out on it. So it's been a long effort to finally get here.
About 100 photographers had applied. The 3 best had to show what they could do, all on the same day. Aitchison's best 12 pictures did it for the jury. An obligatory photo shoot for Alex is the dress rehearsal for the big opening concert in Usher Hall. It'll feature the BBC Scottish Symphony Orchestra and the Edinburgh Festival Chorus. It's an ideal opportunity for the photographer to catch the musicians in action. The chorus is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. A group photo is a must.
Get these really, really tight in. Some young people to the front.
It's the 4th time at the festival for chorus member Claire Hewitt.
It connects in the way that it draws people from around the world and draws musicians from around the world who are invited to perform at the festival, and for the chorus to be working with those people as well makes it extra special.
Inside, on Edinburgh's big stages, world-class dancers go through the motions. A highlight was Sylvie Guillaume of France and her performance of Life in Progress. Outside in the Old Town, street performers prove that all the world is a stage.
Economically, it means a great deal, because obviously all the hotels and restaurants do very well, and it's an important part of our economy. But I think that Edinburgh has always been a great centre of intellectual life.
It's Alex Aitchison's last shoot of the day. The BBC Scottish Symphony Orchestra and Edinburgh Festival Chorus's opening concert. He's got only seconds to get his photos before all cameras are banned.
It's a really privileged position to be in when I'm still already picking up mementos like the kind of security cards and stuff like that, just to make sure that I'm going to remember this.
The shoot is done, but there's no time for a break. Now Alex Acheson's got to develop and print the photos. And there's still a lot more excitement to catch at the Edinburgh International Festival.
Moving on now to the Dutch painter Piet Mondrian. Now, his works are instantly recognizable with their bright primary colors and geometric shapes. His painting evolved from impressionistic landscapes to a more severe modern style as his career developed in Paris and then later on in New York. Well, 71 years after his death, Mondrian's style still has a strong impact on artists and designers today.
Rectangular blocks of color separated by a grid of black lines. Dutch painter Piet Mondrian established this art form. His composition with red, black, yellow, blue, and gray bears the painter's unmistakable hallmark.
On the one hand, Piet Mondrian's composition is strikingly simple, and on the other, it's incredibly radical. Radical because it established the milestone of concrete art in modern art history.
Piet Mondrian's style strongly influenced 20th century design, and his influence extends right up to the present day. Furniture designers play with his clear structures. Artists also adopt them. Ernest Zakharevich from Lithuania, for instance, paints the motif on entire building walls. The Gemeente Museum was built in 1935 in the Dutch city of The Hague. Architect Hendrik Petros Berlage found inspiration in Mondrian's art for the interior design. The museum exhibits some 300 of the painter's works. Starting in 1921, he developed a basic motif that he changed slightly each time. The composition with red, black, yellow, blue, and gray is part of that cycle.
What also was important for Mondrian was his idea of the world, the unity of the world. And he was influenced by theosophic ideas, and one of the ideas was that you had a balance between a female side and a male side. And this idea of female-male side came into the painting as a balance between horizontal and vertical. And this was something that could much better be searched for in abstract work than in a realistic work.
Vivid colors combined with gray, black, and white. Each rectangle is different in size. At first glance, it all looks symmetrical, but it's not. Mondrian wanted to direct the viewer's eye to the essentials, form and color, and that played a decisive role. The artist never used pure colors from a tube. He mixed them himself and created widely diverse compositions.
If you look at this painting from 1921, the first thing you see, I think, is the grid. And then when you start looking more closely, pay attention to the lines. So the lines often don't end at the end of the painting. They end a little before the end of the painting. So he didn't want to give the impression that the painting was a detail of a larger part. And also interesting, look at the way he painted it. Try to see the pencil strich, because he uses that with intention. He uses that to catch light and to reflect light.
In 1965, French fashion designer Yves Saint Laurent used the motif in his winter collection. The dress became a classic. And designers the world over repeatedly used the iconic Mondrian pattern ever since. The geometry of this masterpiece is also an ideal template for architects. The source of inspiration for this school in The Hague is unmistakable. Architect Eric Schotte very consciously used Piet Mondrian's aesthetic.
For me as an architect, Mondrian is very interesting because his way of working involves precise reflection on how the colors and composition should be. You need no further discussion. It's all planned and thought through. And we try to do that in our architecture so that no questions remain.
Mondrian's art has long been part of our everyday lives. in references that many people scarcely recognize anymore. 100 years ago, his experimental style was revolutionary. Now his compositions are classics.
If you think of Mondrian, it's so much about dynamics and about optimistic way of looking at life, and I think that's something people could relate to, and especially designers and fashion designers.
Mondrian's paintings are all iconic. That's interesting for architects because the paintings have a sort of tension, divide up the surface so beautifully and are completely abstract.
We shouldn't forget that our present day is full of allusions to Mondrian. Cosmetic items, handbags, sport clothes. And that makes this work both fascinating and iconic.
And from the Netherlands, we head south to Switzerland for our next report. The canton of Fribourg has a choice when it comes to languages, as both French and German are spoken there. So let's start off on Lac Neuchâtel, or in German, Neuenbergersee, for a first impression.
This is Estavayer-le-Lac, a medieval town located on the southern shores of Lake Neuchâtel. It's a popular destination for holidaymakers. Those who love water sports will adore the lake's 800-meter-long water ski course. And for the less sporty, there's a viewing platform nearby. Many water sports enthusiasts return here time and time again.
We're here for the action on the water. This is Switzerland's only cable ski course. The season started and we're here every weekend.
The capital of this canton is located 30 kilometers from the lake. Fribourg is famous for its centuries-old bridges and for its historic district, which is perched on a hill. Many of Fribourg's residents head down to the city's weekly market. Local farmers sell their products here. Be sure to sample some of their fine fromage. A train ride away from Fribourg are several villages famous for their culinary traditions. This old train has been dubbed the chocolate train. It winds through the countryside. Passengers disembark in Gruyère. And next door is Brock, home to Switzerland's oldest chocolate factory, Maison Caillé. Today, the factory also boasts a museum. More than 300,000 tourists visit the chocolate factory every year. They come from elsewhere to sample the treats on offer at Maison Caillé. Few leave disappointed.
I like chocolate, and I think I would take white chocolate.
Back to Gruyère, a village famed for its cheese. Well over 1 million tourists pass through here every year. But Gruyère also features a chateau that dates back to the 12th century. Gruyère's cheese was first produced back then in the castle's kitchen. It was made by heating milk over an open fire. The dairy in the alpine hamlet Molisson-sur-Gruyère has been making cheese by hand for 300 years. A farmer transfers the cheese milk off the fire and then puts it into a mold. Visitors can watch as the delicacy is made.
This mold is called La Caillette.
The cheesemaker's traditional tools and his costumes are on show in the dairy's hut, which itself is 400 years old. And there's a shop too.
People do love Gruyère in India too. And it is really, really fresh. That's the best part about eating Gruyère cheese in Gruyère.
This part of the Swiss Alps starts near Gruyère. The Molisson is a northern mountain in the range. Christophe Aiby is a guide here. He leads trekkers up the slopes of the 2-kilometer high mountain.
What's distinctive about Montluçon is that it really sticks out. You can see it from a long way off. It's the symbol of Fribourg canton.
If you'd rather relax and enjoy the view on the way up, you can also take a cable car. From here you can see the Alpine peaks, including the mighty Mont Blanc. And you can catch a glimpse of the Alpine dells as well. The summit is the perfect place to take in Fribourg canton in all its beauty.
Beautiful. All right. Exactly 80 years ago this week, an analog tape recorder was launched by the AEG General Electricity Company. It made its debut here in Berlin at the International Electronics Fair with cutting-edge technology that promised to pave the way forward for music lovers. Well, it certainly did. It revolutionized the way people collected and listened to music until digital formats took over. Euromaxx has this tribute now to the great-grandfather of music recording machines.
80 years have passed since the introduction of the tape recorder. Most people only know it as a museum piece. But some people collect them. To Uwe Mehlhaff, threading the tape is a kind of ritual, something that simply pressing a play button can never be. Mehlhaff owns 7 tape recorders. Some are worth several thousand euros nowadays.
Of course, it's a major effort, and it's time lost that you could have spent listening to the music. But I like it that way. It's fun. And if you didn't thread the tape right and don't hear anything, you might curse a little, but that's all just part of the fun.
The electronics company AEG presented the first practical tape recorder at the 1935 Great German Radio and Television Exhibition, the Magnetophone K1. It was a turning point in the history of sound recording. At first, mainly radio stations used the new technology. It was continually refined through the years. The German Museum of Technology in Berlin collects recorders from every decade.
What was revolutionary about the invention of the tape recorder wasn't so much the better quality, but that you suddenly had so much more time available for recording. A reel of tape had far more capacity than the wax and shellac records or any other technology at the time. The second revolutionary aspect was that you could edit the sound.
Das zweite Revolutionäre am Tonbandgerät war, dass man schneiden konnte.
For home use, reel-to-reel hit the peak of its popularity in the 1960s. By 1962, an estimated 5 to 6 million tape recorders had found their way into West German homes.
You might describe the tape recorder as the music sound and recording system for ambitious amateurs. Of course, you had to know how to work it, especially when you wanted to record some family get-together or speech or concert. That gave you the chance to impress quite a lot of people.
The invention of multi-track technology also revolutionized studio music in the 1960s. But the original master recordings of old studio productions from the 1970s, for instance, are often pressed directly to vinyl. There's a small but dedicated circle of fans for these pressings.
They're authentic, and I think people hear and expect that. It wouldn't be authentic if you cleaned up an old recording somehow using the latest production technology and forced it into a sound aesthetic that's modern but was never intended that way.
In a time of MP3s and music streaming, the reel-to-reel tape may seem ridiculously antiquated. But to fans like Uwe Mehlhaff, it's a return to acoustic paradise.
And from that acoustic paradise to now a gourmet's paradise as we wrap up the show with a taste of Nice. We are off to one of my favorite destinations, the south of France, to a restaurant that has catered to the upper crust for decades. Bon appétit.
The old harbour of Nice, one of the most beautiful spots in the city on the Côte d'Azur. A few steps away, down the rugged Coco Beach, is a small, inconspicuous restaurant. A family operation for almost 80 years, it bears the name of its location, Coco Beach. It's hosted illustrious guests for decades.
Passer un très bon moment.
People should just be able to enjoy a good time here, in pleasant surroundings, with food on their plate, food that has its natural flavours.
D'authentique et qui a vraiment le goût du produit.
The selection of fresh products is wide in Nice. Open-air markets offer everything grown in the countryside of Provence. The southern French city is also a paradise for people who like fish and seafood. Coco Beach is so near the water that the fishermen bring their catch here even before they take it to the market.
Oh, bonjour Dédé.
Hi, what do you have today?
Du loup.
Ah, sea bass. Let's take a look at it. Yes, the eyes are still bright. The gills are red. This is what really fresh fish looks like.
For decades, Coco Beach has scarcely changed the way it prepares sea bass.
We prepare it as naturally as possible, so the true flavour isn't lost. You don't add oil or vinegar to high-quality caviar because you want its natural taste. It's the same with sea bass. With such a wonderful product, you shouldn't adulterate its flavour with sauces.
The gutted fish is placed on the charcoal grill just at the point when it's producing the greatest heat.
It should be grilled quite fast at a high temperature, but not for too long. It should still be pink inside, and it mustn't be too dry.
Meanwhile, Pierre Quirino prepares the side dish, slicing tomatoes and aubergines and placing them on the grill beside the fish. Quirino tells us how to make the sea bass really moist.
You leave the scales on at first, because that protects the meat of the fish. When you turn the fish over, the scales are burned. Now you carefully remove them, first with a fork, then with a little brush, so that the burned scales don't detract from the flavour of the fish.
Le griller pour pas donner le goût du brûlé au poisson.
After about 20 minutes, he removes the fish and vegetables from the grill. He removes the bones, then adds a little salt and plenty of olive oil. Among the customers at Coco Beach, grilled sea bass was always a favorite dish, and it still is. Actors Alain Delon and Romy Schneider were regular guests here. And Pablo Picasso sometimes paid his bill by spontaneously drawing on it. These drawings are now worth a fortune.
Il a fêté pendant de nombreuses années tous ses anniversaires. Chaque année,
for years, he used to celebrate his birthdays here, with his family and many friends. I think he just liked it here. He loved to spend a few pleasant hours here with this view of Nice.
Le bonheur de passer un bon moment.
this is another way haute cuisine can look. Simple and classic, enjoyed with a view of the Bay of Nice.
And that wraps up this Highlights edition. We are glad you tuned in and hope to see you again real soon.